Westerlies, we are so excited to be back. We really fell in love with Bozeman last time we were here, just a couple of years ago. So it's wonderful to be back. Since we're going to be real casual today, I think we should just introduce ourselves. My name is Riley.
Hey, I'm Chloe.
I'm Addison.
I'm Andy. And we thought we could play a few songs, and then we'd love to talk with you all about a few different things, some things that are sort of core to our group. One of the things about being in a brass quartet, we started this endeavor almost 15 years ago, and we didn't have much of a model in terms of this instrumentation existing in the world, so a lot of our work and a lot of our whole history as a band has been finding music from different places and reimagining it, reinterpreting it, and also composing and improvising ourselves. So we'd love to share a little bit about all of that with you this morning. And we thought we'd start with a song that we are going to be releasing in just about a month. This is going, or a little over a month, sorry. But this is going to be a single off our next record. And we're releasing an album that is inspired by and dedicated to the tradition of shape note singing, a tradition of communal singing that we fell in love with through a folk singer by the name of Sam Amadon. But more on all that later. Let's play a little bit of music. This is an old song, shape note song called Fight On. How about it for Riley on that one? Riley Mulherford. Thank you. That was a piece by the great Duke Ellington, one of our musical heroes, one of America's great cultural treasures, and someone that has a lot of meaning and impact on our lives as musicians. We like to play that one to sort of celebrate where we come from. And where this band comes from, our origins actually go back to middle school and high school public band rooms in Seattle, Washington. Riley and I grew up in Seattle and went to rival middle schools and high schools competing in all these band festivals and jazz competitions. And the first time I heard Riley play that song, Echoes of Harlem, was in middle school. We were competing against each other at a regional jazz festival. He was wearing his purple cummerbund, I was wearing my green cummerbund, and we were bitter rivals.
But all downhill since then.
All downhill since then. Fast forward a few years, we found ourselves in New York, in college, not unlike yourselves, and this band really formed out of a desire to make music that didn't really fit into the jazz programs we were in or the classical programs we were in, but something that was much more personal to us. So, as Riley said, it's been about 15 years, and that whole journey has been finding all sorts of new music to play because this is not a traditional quintet format that you might see. There's not really a huge repertoire of music for 2 trumpets and 2 trombones. So that has meant a lot of original composing, a lot of arrangements of pieces like that Duke Ellington we just played, And the last piece we're going to share before we get into some interactive activities is sort of a hybrid arrangement and recomposition of two very old shape note hymns from the 1800s. The first is called The Royal Band, and the second is called Soft Music. And this is one that I sort of deranged and threw into a musical blender. And do we have any composers in the room, or people who are composers or arrangers? So some of the fun compositional techniques you might hear in this one are rounds or fugues. There's some retrograde and inversion of the original melodies, which just means flipping it backward or turning it upside down. And I put it all together into this mashup that I call the Royal Band / Soft Music. And I will also let you in on a little secret, which is that we have never played this memorized before, and it's really scary. And this is the first time we're ever going to try it, and we might crash and burn. But you all seem like a friendly crowd. So we're going to try this. It takes a long time for us to learn music and memorize it, and today is our first time playing this one. We hope you like it. And the other thing I almost forgot, we need your help. This one has a percussion part. So if everyone can clear off your jackets or whatever is on your knees, we need you to slap your knees like Riley is doing right now.
No Russian, no drag.
The tempo needs to be exactly 97.4 BPM, not a click faster, or else Chloe's part gets very, very hard at the end. So we're going to do a quick rehearsal. There's going to come a point at the golden ratio of the song where I'm going to stick my slide in the air and we're all going to stop on the next downbeat. So let's get it going again. We're going to have a rehearsal. Up. One more time. Gotta be ready. Okay, here we go. The Royal Band, Soft Music. We can get the percussion going. Let's give it up to Andy, who put that whole thing together. And thank you for being such a friendly audience, you know. Andy texted me this morning and he said, we're going to do this song. And I had fear, just straight to the core of my chest, you know. And then I walked in here and I saw all of you and I was like, okay, it's going to be okay. We did it. Cool. So Andy threw out these words, composition and also improvisation. And improvisation is really a core part of everything we do. Whether we're playing music like that, a song that's 150 years old, whether we're playing a song of Duke Ellington's, whether we're playing a contemporary classical piece, even a fully notated through composed piece, we are still always coming at music we approach through the lens of improvisation. And we thought we could talk a little bit about that with all of you, because improvisation is one of these words where a lot of times when people hear the word improvisation, actually similar to how I felt this morning, that feeling of fear going straight to your chest, you know. But also, improvisation, we sometimes think of it within quite a narrow construct or quite a narrow definition. So I'm curious if just in this room, raise your hand if you've ever improvised before. Great, so most folks in here have some experience in improvisation. Now I'm curious, for the folks who raise their hands, when you have encountered improvisation before, can you tell me what was the context, what was the setting, maybe even how did it go? So anyone who had their hand up, can you raise your hand again and tell me? Yeah, in the back. Drum solo, nice. What, in a small group, large group?
Country band.
Country band, love it. Okay, here?
Like soloing in a jazz ensemble.
Jazz ensemble, yeah, right here.
Small trombone solo.
Yep, solo, yep.
We had a class where we got the string instruments got into quartets and improvised.
Cool, so quartets improvising together. I like that because, you know, I came into improvisation, I think all four of us came into the improvisation very much through this lens of the solo, which is the most common way we think of improvisation. It's so much pressure on one person, right? You might have a band or a couple of people accompanying, and then one person has to get up and create something brand new on the spot that's never happened before, which is wonderful, and which we all love doing that as well. But as a group, we think of improvisation so much more as a collective exercise, similar to what he was just saying over there. And we were really lucky in that when we grew up in Seattle, as Andy mentioned, we had a mentor of ours, a great composer by the name of Wayne Horvitz. And Wayne showed us a method for improvisation and composition on the spot, really, that broke down a lot of barriers for us. And we love to preach this practice everywhere we go because we find it so helpful in breaking down the walls of improvisation and composition as a group activity, as a collective exercise. So this process actually came from Wayne's mentor, who was a guy by the name of Butch Morris. Has anyone ever heard of Butch Morris? I'm always curious. Cool. So that's a hip name to note and to check out his work and his practice. But Butch Morris developed this technique called conduction. And what it is essentially conducted, organized improvisation. And we love using this practice to create new sounds, to create new, we call it raw material, that we can then bring into a new composition, a new arrangement, a new improvisation later down the road, you name it. And we thought we would teach this practice to you so that today we can have some of you come down here and create some new pieces with us. That would be a lot of fun. And then also, hopefully, so you can take this practice wherever you're going, into your rehearsals, into your ensembles, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to give sort of a speed run-through breakdown of how conduction works. And the most important thing to remember right now in conduction is that there are going to be 3 steps. Now, if you're standing up here in the heat of battle, it's very easy to forget. We see this happen all the time. So I want to ask you, how many steps are there in conduction? 3, that's right. Thank you. Now, the first step in conduction, I'll put my horn down so I can demonstrate. The first step in conduction is I, as the conductor, am going to point to any one of these performers, so that they know they're up next. So I could point to Andy right here. You'll notice, has Andy played a note yet? No sound, but he's so ready. Look at him. Wow. Step number 2, I'm going to give Andy a signal. And conduction is a series of signals that represent parameters. Can someone define parameter for me? What's a parameter? I see what you're doing. I like that. Yeah, it's a box. It's a box that we're going to limit ourselves to. One of my favorite things to do is to put myself in a box, because that's when creativity bounces around all the sides of the box, and then breaks free. So the first parameter, the first signal we're going to start with today is long tone. I'm sure we're all familiar with long tones, especially our fellow brass musicians in the room. And this signal for long tone is going to go like this. Can everyone show me long tone? So step number 1, I pointed to Andy. Step number 2, I'm going to give Andy the signal for long tone. Now he knows what he's going to play, but still, has he played a note yet? No. So step number 3, I'm going to cue him in. And then as the conductor, I can also cut him off. How about it for that tone? Wow. 10,000 hours went into that. No. Now, where was the improvisation there? Where was the improvisation? Yeah. Yeah, which note he was going to play. I didn't tell him what note. I just told him it had to be a what? A long tone. Now, if he's playing his long tone, and I cue him again, so I'm the conductor, I have the freedom here, I could give him another cue. What can he do? He can change notes, right? Or another option is he could re-articulate, right? So with just the signal of long tone, we can start to create something that could sound like a chorale or a melody. Let's bring some of the others into it too. Here, I'm going to get the mic stand.
Keep holding it. Nice, how about it?
And I love it because as a conductor, you know, I have some control, but also I don't really know what's going to happen. And so at the end there, I thought we were going to hit a resolution, and it turned out to be a question mark. And then I heard it, and I was like, no, actually, that's the ending. That's the chord. Beautiful. Now, another thing I love as a composer is all 4 of us Westleys, we talk about this all the time, how difficult it is to sit down with a pencil and a piece of paper, or to sit down in front of a computer screen with Sibelius or Finale in front of you and just have to create something out of nothing, right? We run into that feeling of writer's block all the time. And the wonderful thing about this process is that we're creating music, we're creating materials that we may fall in love with, and maybe we could never find those sounds, find that harmony, find those progressions if we were just looking at a screen or looking at a piece of paper. So a lot of times we'll record when we're improvising. You know, you can throw down a voice memo on a phone, and we can go back to it. I could say, oh, that last progression that we just hit, or that last chord we played, I want to know what that chord was, because to me it sounded like a question mark. I could just ask them right now, actually, do you remember the last chord? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. 3, 4. Yeah. I love the sound of that. I don't have perfect pitch. My ear training is so-so. So right now I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I could transcribe it. I could bring it into a composition or an arrangement. Now, let's spice things up. I want to move quickly here. The next signal that we're going to introduce is the signal for loop. Everyone show me loop like this. A loop is going to be a short, repeated phrase. So I could point to Chloe, step 1. I could give her the signal for loop, step 2, and then I could cue her in. Pretty self-explanatory, right? She's repeating it. It's short, it's simple, but we could also add some long tones to it. So you can see how these different loops can build on top of each other. Now, Andy was doing a nice loop there. Andy, let's hear your loop. Let's say I want Addison to jump on what Andy's playing. If I give Addison the signal for loop, what's he going to do? He's going to make his own loop, right? So the next signal I'm going to introduce is for imitate. Everyone show me imitate. We're going to tug on our ear. And so I could point to Addison, which is step 1. I could give Addison the signal for imitate. Now, if there's a lot of stuff going on, he might ask, what am I going to imitate? So then I'll point to Andy, so he knows what he's going to imitate. And then I can bring him in. Great. So did Addison match what Andy was playing note for note? No. So it's sort of like Survivor, where now he's eliminated, and now we're a trio. Just kidding. So we don't have perfect pitch, but it's actually great because we can find different sounds, different harmonies. What we want to do is we want to match the gesture or the shape of any phrase. So let's just build on that for a second. Right back where we were. 3. Doing this nice riff, I want to introduce the last signal we'll start with today, which is for freestyle or solo. So going back to what we were saying about improvisation before, this last signal gives any performer the freedom to do whatever they want. It could be to solo on top of everything going on. It could be an extended technique. It could be a long tone. It could be a loop. It's at the discretion of the player. And the signal is this. Everyone show me freestyle. Everyone show me loop. Long tone. Imitate. Great. How many steps in conduction? Nice. So what if I point to Andy and give him a little freestyle on top of this? it's, and in case it's not evident, it's just so fun because we're coming up with stuff that surprises. You know, we've been playing together for far too long. We've spent way too much time together, yet when we do this, we come up with things that we've never heard each other do before. So I want to get in on the mix here. So I wonder, can we have a volunteer come and conduct us in a new piece, a new conduction piece? Yes, come on down. Let's give it up for our volunteer. Now, can I ask, are you a composer? Are you a performer? All those things. Wonderful. I love coming into this with a compositional mind. What's your name?
Chandler.
Chandler. Let's give it up for Chandler one more time. Take some courage to get up here. Now, we'll quickly review the steps of conduction. How many steps in conduction? 3. The signals that we were working with, we had long tone, we had loop, we had imitate, and after we tug on our ear, you can point to what you want the person to imitate. And then we had freestyle, which was this. Now, we always love giving the conductor an opportunity, if there's any other musical thing you can think of that you might want to happen, to make up your own signal. It could be anything related to dynamics, sound, texture. Does anything come to mind for you, Chandler?
Maybe dynamics.
Dynamics, I like that. So, if you wanted to grow the dynamic, any signal,
I mean, you know, there's
great.
bigger,
We can do bigger
smaller,
and
quieter.
diminuendo, great. Yeah, let's add that to the mix, see what happens. Okay, one more time for Chandler. Here's a new piece. How about it for Chandler? That was incredible. I loved how clear you were. I'm curious how that went for you. Was it surprising? What was challenging? What was cool?
You guys were here last. I was a senior in high school, and I also came up. I wasn't trying to steal from anybody, but nobody raised their hand, so I'm like, I'm going. And I did. I was like, I'm gonna do it again. I really like this method. I was in a brass quintet for a while. Rest in peace. And I just think, I'm a trumpet player, so this instrumentation just makes a lot of sense in my brain. Sorry, French horns, I love you too. And so I think just how you guys blend with your timbre and your sound really makes this work super well, specifically. Not saying you couldn't do it with other instruments, but yeah.
Thank you so much, and amazing to have you back conducting. I'm curious, have you ever done it outside of the context of the first time and this time?
I think I tried, and it didn't go far.
Okay. Well, I'm curious, how many music ed majors do we have in the room? Cool. So we have often found this to be a really useful practice for, especially early music education, just inviting people into music making and improvisation before they know that it's scary. And some of the coolest sounds and textures and improvs we've ever found have been with people who've been only playing their instruments for a year or 2 years or just at the beginning. And the sort of thesis that we're trying to share is it's never too early to start improvising. So thank you, Chandler. Nice to have you back. We've just got a few minutes left, but we wanted to open up the floor if there are any questions about anything we've talked about today, anything we haven't talked about, what a life in music looks like, anything at all. We've got about 8 minutes. Can I ask a question of you all? How many of you have ever been or are currently in a band outside of school that's like a personal project? Okay, less than 15%. Our hope is that everyone has their hand up. There's nothing more fun than playing music for yourself with your friends, and that's really how we got our start. So hopefully a few years from now, if we see you again, everyone will have their hand up. Any questions? Yeah.
Do any of you play any other instruments?
We'll do a lightning round. Not well, but I like to produce and make electronic music as well.
My very first instrument was guitar, and so it's kind of my comfort instrument now because I have no allegiance to work or money or school. I just play it because I love it.
I played a mean electric bass in 6th grade. That's it.
I also play piano and I dabble in French horn a little bit too.
Any other questions? Yeah, Jim.
For those of us just about to like enter the field, I'm not sure, are you all freelancers? Sort of?
Yes, and no. So I'd be happy to talk about that a little bit. We are sort of a full-time operating ensemble. So we spend the whole year rehearsing, touring, recording, teaching, doing all that stuff. At the same time, we all supplement this income and artistic work with other freelance work. Sometimes that's other individual projects. Sometimes that's playing jazz or classical gigs in New York or anywhere really. Sometimes that's playing on Broadway. Chloe right now is holding down a trumpet chair backing up Audra McDonald in Gypsy on Broadway. So we all, put together, and Andy just mentioned production. Andy does a lot of scoring of podcasts and films. So we all put together sort of our own personal portfolio. This is definitely the biggest part because it requires the most commitment. But we would probably still all consider ourselves freelance to some degree. Great question though, because not everyone always breaks that down when you're in school of what the realities will be on the day after graduation. Yeah.
Sure. This question's for Andy about your solo project, the Silo project. You mentioned the electronics. I'm curious because we bring students into lots of different spaces. How you found the location for that project and maybe tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So I put out a record last year that's called Few Ill Words, Solo Trombone at the Tank, which is a mouthful. But the Tank is this 100-foot tall water silo in Colorado that has a 40-second reverb. So how many brass players in the room? We all know how cool it is to play in a space that's super reverberant. I had heard about the space through some friends. The group Roomful of Teeth, which is a great vocal ensemble, had done a project there. The guitarist Bill Frisell had done a project there. And so I've heard lore of this place and had been wanting to go for many years, and finally just made it a priority. We were going to be nearby, and so I splintered off after a Westerlies gig and spent 4 days playing in the silo. I brought some guitar pedals and ran a microphone of the trombone through the guitar pedals and had a really transformative experience just playing and reacting to the space. And if you've ever played in a super reverberant space, it becomes another instrument that you are playing, and you can sort of have a call and response with it. So I think for all instruments, finding unusual spaces to play in, whether it's a big parking garage or a water silo or a gymnasium, it really changes how we play. And we're always talking about, in the Westerlies, sort of reading the room and adjusting how we play to the different spaces, whether it's a big concert hall or a tiny living room. And the more we can be sensitive and listen to how our instruments respond to the space, I think the better musicians we can become. Thanks for asking.
Should we play one more to say goodbye?
Sure. If there are no final questions, we will. Oh, just in the next time.
I recently joined one of the brass quintets here, and one of the things that's been a lot of people like a big ensemble is that's a lot more like vulnerability because it's a smaller group, and that's been one main thing I've been struggling with. And I'm wondering if you have any tips for that.
During my undergrad, the American Brass Quintet was one of my collaborative teachers, and Mike Powell, the trombonist at the time, he gave some amazing advice in that, like, when you're in the orchestra, you're a very small percentage of the music making, whereas when you're in a brass quintet, you're now at least 20% of the music making happening. And so it's definitely vulnerable, but it's also really exciting because you get a lot more agency over the final product in pretty much every scenario. And so allowing those creative juices to flow in a way that you don't often get to when you're in a trombone section or something, then it was really exciting for me, and it kind of took some of the pressure off because like my fellow musicians were also feeling that pressure, so we were all in it together, which was really enjoyable.
Great question. Should we play Shorty?
We'll play.
I just turned it off, sorry.
We'll play one more to say goodbye. Thank you all for hanging with us this morning. We don't know what we're going to play. Let's find out.
The new or two good moves?
Everyone, in case you have to leave to get to your next class, I would really recommend hearing the entire concert tomorrow night. You don't want to miss this, as you can see. Okay? Let's just thank the Westerlies one more time.
This is the shortest song we have.